Good Friday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Zarabski. Happening right now, we are just hours away from a partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. That's after the Senate did not come to an agreement on funding. Senate Democrats shut down the funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security, and now lawmakers are headed out of the town for a week-long recess, meaning the agency could be shuttered for at least 11 days. But Senate leaders say they would come back if a deal can be made. DHS has 200,000 employees, but they won't be impacted equally by this shutdown. ICE is still funded by the $75 billion it received from the big, beautiful bill, so agents will still get their paychecks. TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard, however, don't have the same nest egg.
We want to fund the Department of Homeland Security, but only a department that is obeying the law.
A TSA agent is going to go without a paycheck. Why? So that you can posture politically. I'm over it.
So if you remember the shutdown from this past fall, longest in American history, airport screeners risk losing pay again if the shutdown drags on for more than 2 weeks, something lawmakers say is a possibility. So delays, cancellations could be looming at 430 airports nationwide. Democrats are refusing to fund DHS until changes are made to ICE operations, demanding a ban on face masks and tighter use of force policies.
This idea that we're going to continue to fund them at this level after what they've done to my state, that's not in the cards for me.
We're also hearing today from city and county leaders about the end of the Operation Metro Surge. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, saying the operation is ending and agents will be leaving over the next week. Hennepin County Sheriff DeWanna Witt says the end of the operation is a relief, but now it's up to law enforcement to rebuild trust with their community.
And while the operation may be ending, the impact is not, and we understand that. In many ways, the real work begins now. This agency always looks at how we can do our jobs better. So that means we will be going back and looking at things that we can improve on. And that's what every agency should be doing. It's not once something's over or going through it. You always should be going back, addressing all issues, and seeing how is it that you can improve.
Happening today, journalist Don Lemon will be in Minneapolis federal court for an arraignment. The charges stem from an anti-ICE protest at a St. Paul church last month. Lemon says that he was covering the protest as an independent journalist, calling the case against him an attack on the First Amendment. Activist Nikema Levy Armstrong will also be in court today in connection with the case. Now, an update you need to know about this morning. Prosecutors are planning to drop charges against two men who allegedly assaulted an ICE agent with a broom and a shovel. The U.S. Attorney's Office now says the agent's allegations were inconsistent with the evidence. Last month, DHS said the two men hit the agent with a shovel and a broom, and that's why the agent fired his gun. But attorneys for the two men argue surveillance video shows a different story, saying the agent fired as the men ran toward a house.
You know, I think if this was a case 20 years ago where we didn't have all the surveillance that we do, you know, municipal surveillance, ring cameras on doorbells, that lie, if I can go that far, might never been uncovered. But, you know, in today's day and age, there's video cameras all over the place. And so it's much more difficult to get away with something on the street.
Attorney Frederick Getz also says it's rare for a case like this to be dismissed so early in the process. He says it's even more rare for it to be dismissed with prejudice. It's a legal term that means that the two men can never be charged again in relation to this incident. Governor Walz proposing $10 million in emergency funding to small businesses impacted by Operation Metro Surge. It's part of a package the governor is putting forward ahead of the legislative session that starts next week. Here's Danny Spiewak with a closer look at those details.
During Operation Metro Surge, some local businesses like Bauhaus Brew Labs in Minneapolis reported losing nearly half their customers, not to mention workers afraid to leave their homes.
This is hitting everyone.
Now, Governor Walz has proposed $10 million in emergency loans to small businesses.
This legislative session needs to be about recovery of the damage that's been done to us.
The loans, administered through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, would provide businesses with up to $25,000 and could be partially forgiven.
We know that the economic harms are far in excess of that, but this helps, we believe.
This legislative proposal for small business relief cannot pass without the support of House Republicans, who hold a tie in the chamber.
I would really be interested in seeing exactly what the governor is choosing to propose there.
House Speaker Lisa Dameth, who is running for the GOP nomination for governor, did not rule out supporting the relief funding, but also wouldn't commit to it. The $10 million in funding would make up a small portion of the state's $66 billion two-year budget.
We're headed toward a deficit as a state. Our funds are very, very limited. So I would be very curious where the governor is going to find the dollars that he's talking about.
U.S. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer took a stronger stance, calling the relief funding a new avenue for fraud in Minnesota. Meanwhile, Governor Wall has also called on the federal government to pay Minnesota for damages, joined by U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is also now running for governor on the DFL side.
All these extra costs that our local law enforcement have incurred and our sheriff's deputies and the like, they should reimburse us.
Meantime, a federal judge is ordering Homeland Security to improve access to phones and lawyers at the federal Whipple building. The temporary restraining order comes after two lawyers who toured the detention area said that there were incorrect phone numbers for counsel and that instructions for using the phones were only in English and they were complex, they said. The order also requires access for lawyers 7 days a week. Reactions are pouring in from across the state as the announcement of the end of Operation Metro Surge spreads. At the memorials of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, visitors also all say that this news is welcome, but some are waiting to see if the end of the surge will actually happen. Community members told us that they, quote, will believe it when they see it, end quote. They say that even though officials said Operation Metro Surge had a goal of making Minneapolis safer, they believe the presence of federal agents have made the community more dangerous. They also say their mistrust comes from a perceived lack of accountability.
It isn't like that's going to take care of all the problems they left behind. Maybe we'll see some change, legislative change, because of it. But still, this little boy is never going to have his mom back.
I think the plan is to continue to remain vigilant. I'm hopeful that they will leave, but I'm doubtful it's going to happen in the way that they're saying it will.
A sense of relief right now among immigration attorneys who say that they've been cautiously optimistic this day would come since Tom Homan took charge of the immigration surge. Gordon Severson has more.
We're not saying this is over.
When we spoke with community organizers to see how they felt about Operation Metro Surge possibly ending in Minnesota, we received mixed reactions.
I think what Governor Wall said about being cautious, I think that's our attitude.
Kate Haviland is with Indivisible Twin Cities, a group that was involved in planning many of the large protests over the last few months. She says, based on what has happened in other cities where large ICE operations have come and gone, she argues their fight isn't over.
People are still being detained, grabbed, deported.
I'm a little bit skeptical.
Evangeline Dewan Maloney is an immigration lawyer with RSC Law. She says many of her clients' cases are still ongoing, and she hopes this announcement means that the federal government will go back to focusing on mostly criminal non-citizens.
Hopefully what we're going to see is more targeted immigration enforcement, which has traditionally been how immigration enforcement has been conducted.
It feels like the beginning of the next chapter.
At the Greater Twin Cities United Way, there is a sense of relief, but leaders say their work is just getting started.
There are community members that have been impacted, that haven't been to work, that haven't been to school, that are probably behind in their lessons, that are already behind in February's rent and are trying to figure out how to meet March's rent.
Senior Vice President Shannon Smith-Jones says it will take months to a year for many families and small businesses to financially recover.
No matter what happens, there's still going to be some recovery that needs to happen.
Gordon Severson reporting there. Moving on now, this morning the FBI is upping their reward to $100,000 in the search for Nancy Guthrie as we near 2 weeks since she was last seen. FBI Phoenix is releasing brand new details about the suspect from the security footage. They said it's wearing a black. The person is wearing a black Ozark Trail hiker pack, which you can see here. They also believe the person is 5'9" or 5'10". They say they've gotten more than 13,000 tips related to the case. And new this afternoon, Ring is ending its partnership with Flock Safety after backlash over a Super Bowl ad highlighting the partnership. The ad showed how Ring owners can share their camera's video to help owners of lost dogs find their animals. Immediately, people brought up concerns over how that type of AI could be used. Amazon says that it realized the integration would have cost too much time and money. Ring says the dog finding function is still available and users have to grant video sharing permission each time a pet owner requests it. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.